This video is an excerpt from the HeroCast, which is my patron and member only little podcast that we do a couple times a month. If you'd like to listen to it in full, as we tackle a lot of other topics, both about YouTube content in general and PSVR2 and flat screen, then please visit the link in the description below to support the channel if you do feel so inclined. That's why this video is in a bit more of a conversational style and less structured than my usual stuff, but I still hope you enjoy me talking about the resurgence of PSVR2. And if you do that, you also don't have to listen to the sponsored segment of today's video, but I do encourage you to stick around and listen to this because today's video is sponsored by VR Tactical Gear, who make the Armory R1 VR Gunstock. This is the gunstock that I use the most on PSVR2 and I find it fantastic. It essentially works by having one controller locked into the stock at all times and one controller free, meaning you can still prop up and stabilize yourself for those very important shots in VR shooter games, but you can also use that free hand to reload easily, manage your inventory and items, and I find it's the best all-rounder for games like Ghosts of Tabor, Pavlov, Crossfire, and Breaches. It not only adds to your immersion, but also genuinely makes you better at the game, allowing you to be much more stable when you aim and get those kills far easier. The entire design is injection molded, it's lightweight and durable. There's no magnets here if you're worried about that. It's all easy to get in and out of. And it's compatible with every single PSVR shooter that I've played. And if you'd like to get one for PSVR2 or any other headset, the link is in the description below. Now I want to kick off the start of this HeroCast episode with a focus on PSVR2 as a headset and how it's developed over the last year or two, because we've really seen a bit of a resurgence in terms of a lot of ports coming to the headset that we've kind of been wanting for a long time, and it's really built up a base of games that people are quite passionate about, and there's a lot to choose from. If you're jumping into PSVR2 now, you've got so much choice in terms of what genre you want to go for, what games you want to go for, whether you're multiplayer, single player, what kind of mechanics you like. And I think that's one of the most underrated parts about this headset now that we don't really talk about enough, is that it's kind of been resurrected in terms of the game choice here. Because to kind of understand this, we've got to go back to when the headset came out, 2 years ago, over 2 years ago now. God, time really does fly. But when the headset came out, we had quite a few exclusives like Resi 8, Horizon Call the Mountain, GT7 that people were really excited for, and since then we've gotten a couple sprinkled in there that are just as good quality, like Hitman, for example, Behemoth, Rogue Incursion. Now, a couple of these games that have been added are cross-platform with other ones in terms of where they've been released. They've been released on Quest, on PCVR, but those are kind of the big games that make up our bulk, and we've had quite a few of those since launch. But at launch there were a couple, and then for about a year we didn't really see too many in terms of what really is going to be bringing people to the headset. It was only late last year where we had a couple of like big hitters in 1 or 2 months, which is crazy. But over that time there was the conversation of, well, PSVR2 doesn't have enough games to really bring new people on board. And I remember talking about this a lot. I mean, IGN spoke about it, Bloomberg spoke about it, and it was kind of a big thing in terms of they were putting out articles saying that the headset has no games and it's dead and Sony don't care. And to an extent, I mean, Sony compared to Meta, they don't, in terms of how much they put into virtual reality as a whole. They just haven't put that investment in compared to Meta, who keep pumping money into VR. But it doesn't mean they don't care whatsoever. I mean, we got the Hitman port, that was fantastic. We got all these great launch titles as well. We had Synapse, which was funded by then, and they've kind of reined in that funding since then. I think in terms of the new leadership, they've kind of toned that down a bit. But overall, I still think that the lineup we have here over the last 2 years or so is really kind of built up on a AAA or big game side of things, to the point where those conversations that we had, last year, the year before, of is it worth getting a PSVR2? Is it a headset that's going to be getting any games going forward? They've kind of been put to bed now. And it's not an elitist thing. I mean, I don't have any sort of brand loyalty over any other VR platform in terms of what I play. For example, what I cover here on the channel is PSVR2, but when you look at PCVR or Quest, I've played Quest games in the past. I currently don't have a Quest headset with me, and I'd like to change that at some point, to be honest, because I do enjoy playing Quest games, but I play a lot on PCVR. I mean, this month I played more PCVR than PSVR2, for example, but in terms of what I cover on the channel, I'm mostly PSVR2, but as a player, I'm not really loyal to any different subset of VR. I love them all, and that's kind of where I'm coming from here in terms of, PSVR2 isn't better in every way over other platforms, because I love the modding of PCVR, I love the exclusives of Quest, but I think PSVR2 as a platform, PS5 as a VR, hosting platform basically, is a worthwhile place to be. I always believed it was since launch, to be honest. We had some great games and we always knew the library was going to expand, but it's really coming into like this year now where there are just so many games. And when somebody asks for recommendations, I struggle to answer the question because there are simply so many good games that I played in the last 2.5 years. You know, in my library on PSVR2, I have 144 games on my account. That is crazy. How many games, you know, I've just covered on the channel. There are much more in the store that I have yet to cover at all. So that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg there. But it's fantastic how many games we have. Honestly, it's been growing immensely, and that's when we mentioned the indies really as well, because they come in and they kind of make up a clear baseline for the bottom of the headset. When we've done our big releases like Behemoth and Alien, I don't count these as indie games because they're not, they're big companies, even though Skylance might count as independent, whatever, and Metro and all these things, they're kind of the big hitters, and Hitman, for example. But when we have games like Arc Age, Legendary Tales coming in, Compound, I don't know why I picked Compound, that's just one that I've been playing a bit recently, so it came to my mind. But we've got a couple of baseline ones underneath there that are really kind of filling out those different niche parts of the headset that people want to dive into. You know, for every big narrative game like Metro that we like, the headset has also got Legendary Tales, which is maybe not as polished as those big AAA games or those big non-independent games, but it does leveling up and a massive map and combat really well. Same with Arc Age. I think the combat in that game is fantastic, and although the story isn't quite, you know, on par with some of the other games that I played in VR, didn't really hook me in as well as Metro did or Behemoth did, for example, I think the combat is honestly some of the best combat I've ever played in virtual reality. So it's these games that kind of have lined up the bottom part in my mind of PSVR 2, the baseline, and then on top of that we've got kind of the cherry on top, which are the big AAA or larger games that make up those, you know, highlight reels that you see of trailers that entice people to get to buy the headset, you know, and then they get into the ecosystem and then they find out about Arc Age and they find out about Legendary Tales. Because let's be honest, the flat screen gamer audience, of which I still am one, I love flat screen games, they're fantastic, and at the moment they still offer stuff that VR can't do, but people who play those games will look at the trailers for PSVR 2 and the gameplay, and they'll see games like Metro and Alien and Behemoth, and either these games look so awesome because they're polished and they look cinematic, or they're franchises that they're already familiar with, and that's what will bring them on board. And I think that has kind of been a great little cycle that I've seen quite a few people go through when they bought the headsets, that they bought them for those big games that they kind of know about, and then they've stuck around for the indie stuff that keeps coming out, that keeps surprising people with its quality. And I think that one of the biggest kind of telltale signs that this has worked for PSVR 2, this strategy, whether intentional by Sony or not, maybe it isn't, you know, has worked, because it's built up that layer of games that has kind of taken away the stigma that the platform doesn't have any. And I hate kind of going over and talking about that again and again, because it kind of makes you feel like we're insecure as players of this platform. But it's true, it was a sentiment that kind of got a bit old over the first year or so. It's just outlets saying that there's no point buying the headset, but now we've got to a point where that can't really feasibly be said, or if it is said, you get laughed at because there's so much choice here. The resurgence of PSVR 2 has been a bit of a silent one, but we're here now, and I think we're steadily building and building. And I think the headset sales and the decrease in price has really helped with that as well. But the icing on the cake, I think, to bring some more people on board would be separate Sense controllers being sold separately. That's what I'll end this with. I think having that kind of reassurance that if you break a controller, you can go buy another one, that needs to be there. So I'll add that just as my final note to this. But yeah, it's been fantastic seeing the headset come this far, and hopefully we have a lot more to look forward to.